I'm Cordelia Matthews, 28, and I thought I knew my family. That was before last Tuesday, when my parents cornered me in our kitchen and demanded I liquidate my entire savings account to pay for my sister's $80,000 wedding. Family comes first, my mother said, sliding the bank withdrawal forms across the granite countertop. Serafina deserves her dream day. What they didn't know was that I'd been secretly recording every conversation since discovering their lies 6 months ago. By Wednesday morning, I'd booked a one-way ticket to Prague and transferred my savings to an offshore account they couldn't touch. But before I tell you how I exposed 15 years of family manipulation and financial abuse that destroyed everything they built, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from? If you're somewhere cozy with your real family, hit that like button, because you're about to witness the most satisfying family karma story you've ever heard. Subscribe if you believe in justice, because what happened next changed everything forever. Growing up as the invisible daughter in the Matthews household meant watching my younger sister Serafina get everything while I got the leftovers. Not just material things, though she certainly got those too, but attention, praise, investment, and most importantly, unconditional support for every wild dream that popped into her head. Serafina was born when I was 8, and from day one she was treated like visiting royalty. While I wore hand-me-downs from cousins, she got boutique clothing. While I attended public school and took the bus, she went to private academy and got driven in mom's BMW. When I asked for piano lessons at age 10, I was told we couldn't afford it. When Serafina expressed mild interest in dance at age 5, my parents immediately enrolled her in the most expensive studio in town and bought her a wardrobe that cost more than my entire year's clothing budget. The justifications were always the same. Serafina is more artistic, she has natural talent, she needs more support because she's sensitive. I learned early that questioning this narrative was pointless. Any complaint from me was met with lectures about being jealous, selfish, or failing to support my family. By high school, the pattern was ironclad. I worked part-time jobs to pay for my own car, gas, and college applications, while Serafina got a brand new Jeep for her 16th birthday. I earned academic scholarships through pure determination, while my parents hired expensive tutors and college consultants for her. When I graduated valedictorian, the celebration dinner became about Serafina's upcoming senior year. When she graduated with a 2.8 gigapascals, they threw a massive party and bragged about her creative spirit being more important than grades. College was where the financial disparity became impossible to ignore. I attended state school on scholarships and worked 20 hours a week to cover living expenses. My parents contributed exactly nothing, claiming they were teaching me independence. Meanwhile, they paid full tuition for Serafina's private art college, covered her expensive apartment in Manhattan, and sent her monthly allowances that exceeded my entire income. After graduation, I landed a good job in financial consulting and moved back home temporarily to save money for my own apartment. That's when I discovered the real scope of my parents' investment in Serafina's lifestyle. She was 23, had never held a job, and was pursuing her third expensive hobby, masquerading as a career. First photography, then jewelry design, now lifestyle blogging. Each pivot required new equipment, courses, and financial backing from our parents. The breaking point came when Serafina announced her engagement to Bradley, a trust fund kid whose main accomplishments were getting kicked out of 2 colleges and starting an unsuccessful crypto trading business. The engagement party cost $15,000. The announcement dinner at the country club cost $3,000. And now they wanted the wedding of the century. It's her special day, my mother explained when I questioned the budget. She's only getting married once. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been in a stable relationship with Marcus for 4 years, but my parents had never shown interest in our future or offered to contribute to our eventual wedding. In their world, my milestones didn't matter because I was the responsible one who would figure it out herself. What I discovered next shattered every assumption I had about our family dynamic and revealed a truth so ugly it changed everything. My finance background taught me to notice patterns, and the pattern in my family's spending had always bothered me. How could two middle-class parents, dad worked in insurance, mom was a part-time real estate agent, afford Serafina's extravagant lifestyle year after year? The private school tuition, the Manhattan apartment, the constant financial support for her various ventures should have been impossible on their combined income. The answer came accidentally when I was helping Dad with his taxes. He'd asked me to grab some documents from his home office, and I noticed a folder labeled Estate Planning sitting open on his desk. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold, detailed financial statements showing my college fund had been liquidated my junior year of high school to pay for Serafina's private academy tuition. But that was just the beginning. Further digging revealed a systematic pattern of theft that had been going on for 15 years. The inheritance I'd received from Grandma Matthews when I was 16, $25,000 that was supposed to be in a trust until I turned 21, had been borrowed to fund Serafina's college apartment security, deposit, and first year's rent. The savings bonds relatives had given me for birthdays and graduations over the years had been cash to pay for her photography equipment and art supplies. Most shocking was discovering that my parents had taken out a home equity loan against the house I'd assumed was their primary asset and my potential inheritance, to fund what my father's notes called Serafina's Career Development Fund, $50,000 borrowed against the family home to support her lifestyle, blogging, fantasy, and previous failed ventures. The documentation was meticulous, probably for tax purposes, and it painted a clear picture. For 15 years my parents had been systematically stealing from my present and future to fund my sister's every whim. Money that should have been mine, money from my own relatives, money from the family's shared assets, all diverted to support the golden child's expensive lifestyle. When I confronted them about the inheritance theft, their response was breathtaking in its audacity. That money was needed for family expenses, Dad said, not even looking ashamed. Serafina had immediate needs. When I pointed out that my college fund had also been raided, Mom jumped in with, "You earned scholarships anyway, so it worked out fine." Serafina needed that support to reach her potential. The gaslighting was perfect and practiced. They genuinely seemed to believe that my money was family money available for redistribution to their favorite child, while her money was her money, sacred and untouchable. Any protest from me was reframed as selfishness or jealousy. That night I started recording our conversations. I installed a voice recording app on my phone and began documenting every interaction. What I captured over the next 6 months was a masterclass in financial abuse and emotional manipulation. My parents discussing how to access my savings account for Serafina's wedding. Mom calling me unreasonably selfish for wanting to keep money I'd earned. Dad explaining to someone on the phone that I owed it to the family to fund my sister's happiness. The recordings revealed something else crucial. They were planning to pressure me into co-signing a loan for Serafina's post-wedding business venture. A boutique she wanted to open with no retail experience, business plan, or market research. The expectation was clear: I would be financially responsible for my sister's dreams while being excluded from the family's emotional and practical support. That's when I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about power, control, and a fundamental belief that my purpose in the family was to serve as Serafina's success insurance policy. My job, my savings, my financial stability, all of it existed to subsidize the golden child's lifestyle and protect my parents from the consequences of their irresponsible favoritism. The wedding demand was just the latest escalation in a pattern that would continue until I either went bankrupt supporting my sister or found the courage to break free. As I listened to recording after recording of my parents discussing my money like it belonged to them, I realized I had been groomed from childhood to accept this dynamic as normal family loyalty. But I wasn't going to accept it anymore. The Tuesday morning when my parents sat me down for the wedding funding ultimatum, I was ready. I'd spent weeks preparing for this conversation, knowing it was coming based on the recorded discussions I'd overheard. What they didn't know was that I'd already moved my money to an account they couldn't access and had been building an exit strategy for months. Cordelia, we need to discuss Serafina's wedding expenses. Mom began using the tone she'd perfected over the years, loving but firm, suggesting that disagreeing would make me a monster. The venue deposit is due next week and we're short on funds. Dad slid the bank forms across the table with practiced casualness. We just need you to withdraw your savings and write a check. You can rebuild your account later. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event for your sister. I'd heard variations of this speech in my recordings, but experiencing it live was surreal. They genuinely expected me to hand over $47,000, my entire life savings, without question. The entitlement was staggering. How much are you contributing? I asked, keeping my voice neutral while my phone recorded from my pocket. The question clearly surprised them. Mom blinked rapidly, a tell I'd learned to recognize. Well, we're paying for the rehearsal dinner and the flowers. That's a significant expense. How much? I repeated. About $8,000, Dad admitted reluctantly. So they expected me to contribute 6 times what they were spending, despite having raided my inheritance and college fund to support Serafina for years. The audacity was breathtaking, but I needed more for my plan to work. Where's the rest of the money coming from? I pressed. This time they exchanged glances. Mom cleared her throat. Bradley's parents are covering the venue and catering. Your contribution would handle the dress photography, music, and all the other details Serafina has dreamed about. And if I say no, the mask slipped. Dad's face hardened. Then you're selfish and you'll ruin your sister's happiness. After everything this family has done for you, this is how you repay us. Perfect. I had them exactly where I needed them. But I wasn't done collecting evidence. What has the family done for me? I asked calmly. Mom launched into a prepared speech about providing a home, food, education, and love. She managed to avoid mentioning that I'd paid rent since age 18, bought my own food since getting a job, and funded my own education entirely. The selective memory was impressive. You've had every advantage, she concluded. Your sister needs family support to achieve her dreams. That's what families do. Like when you supported my dreams, I asked. That's different, Dad snapped. You were always independent. Serafina needs more help. There it was. The core justification for 15 years of financial theft and emotional neglect captured in perfect digital clarity. I was independent, so I deserved nothing. Serafina was dependent, so she deserved everything. My success justified their abandonment, her failures justified their investment. Now came my favorite part. The moment I'd been planning for months. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder thick with printed documents. I'm not going to fund Serafina's wedding, I said quietly. And I'm not going to fund any more of her lifestyle. In fact, I'm leaving. I placed the first set of papers on the table, bank statements, showing my savings account had been emptied and transferred. Their faces went white. That's my backup plan documentation, I continued, adding flight confirmations and apartment lease agreements. I'm moving to Prague. My flight leaves tomorrow morning. You can't be serious, Mom whispered. I'm completely serious. I added the final stack of papers, printed copies of recorded conversations, bank statements showing the stolen inheritance money, and documentation of every dollar they'd taken from me over the years. I'm also serious about exposing what you've done. The silence was deafening. Dad picked up the inheritance documentation with shaking hands. Mom stared at the bank statements, showing exactly how they'd been systematically robbing me. These conversations were private, Dad said weakly. Actually, they're legal to record since I was a participant, and they're about to become very public. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm posting everything online tonight. Reddit, Facebook family group chats, Serafina's social media followers. Everyone gets to see exactly what kind of people you are. You wouldn't destroy your family over money, Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. You already destroyed this family when you chose favoritism and theft over fairness and honesty. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. I headed toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and don't bother coming to the airport. I've blocked your numbers and changed all my passwords. You'll never financially abuse me again. The sound of my mother's crying followed me out, but for the first time in my adult life I felt completely free. Tomorrow I would be on a plane to a new life. Tonight I would make sure the whole world knew exactly what the Matthews family was really like. But let me pause here for a moment because I need you to understand something important. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, the golden child who gets everything while you're expected to fund their dreams, the parents who treat your money like family money while protecting their favorites' assets, you're not alone. Hit that like button if this resonates with you, and stay tuned because the revenge I'm about to describe will show you exactly what happens when the truth comes to light. The next part of this story proves that sometimes the best way to save yourself is to burn down the lies that have been destroying you. That evening, I sat in my hotel room near the airport and methodically destroyed my family's reputation with surgical precision. I'd checked out of my childhood bedroom for the last time, and now it was time to ensure they could never manipulate another family member or victim again. My first post went live on Reddit's r/am I Theus Hole at 9 p.m. sharp AITA for refusing to fund my sister's $80,000 wedding and exposing 15 years of family financial abuse. Instead, I laid out the entire story with receipts. Screenshots of the bank documents showing my stolen inheritance. Audio clips of my parents discussing how to access my money without my permission. Photos of the withdrawal forms they'd tried to pressure me into signing. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 2 hours, I had 3,000 upvotes and 1,500 comments. The validation was intoxicating. Strangers understood what I'd endured better than my own family ever had. They saw the pattern of abuse clearly and supported my decision to leave. But Reddit was just the beginning. At 10 p.m., I posted to our extended family Facebook group, all 43 aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents who'd watched Serafina's princess treatment for years while I struggled alone. I included the documentation about my stolen inheritance money, much of which had come from these same relatives as gifts specifically intended for me. The reaction was swift and brutal. Aunt Patricia, who'd given me those savings bonds over the years, commented, "First, I am absolutely disgusted. That money was specifically for Cordelia's future." Uncle Mike, who'd contributed to my college fund, posted, "I want every penny I gave for Cordelia's education accounted for immediately." By midnight, my parents were getting calls from family members demanding explanations. My phone, safely blocked from their numbers, was blissfully quiet while their world exploded. At 1 a.m., I posted to Serafina's Instagram, where she had 12,000 followers eagerly awaiting wedding content. I tagged her in a post that included the wedding budget breakdown and the truth about who was expected to pay for her dream day. "Hey, at Serafina Matthews followers. Thought you'd like to know that the $80K dream wedding you're seeing isn't being funded by the bride and groom or even the parents. They wanted to force me to pay for it by liquidating my life savings. Check out this documentation of how my family has been financially abusing me for 15 years to fund Sarah's lifestyle. Number, wedding reality. Number, family abuse. Number, never again. The Instagram post included photos of Serafina's Manhattan apartment lease with my parents as co-signers, her art school tuition payments sourced from my college fund, and receipts for thousands of dollars in career support that had been stolen from my inheritance. Her followers were not kind. Comments poured in questioning everything about her curated lifestyle. So your whole influencer life is fake. Your parents stole money to pay for your content. This is so embarrassing. The carefully constructed image she'd built crumbled in real time. At 3 a.m., I made my final post in our immediate family group chat. Since you're probably wondering, I'm at the airport hotel. My flight to Prague leaves in 6 hours. I've posted everything publicly because you left me no choice. You chose favoritism and financial abuse over treating your children fairly. Now you get to live with the consequences. I attached a final document, a letter I'd written explaining exactly how their treatment had affected me and why I was leaving forever. I wanted them to understand that this wasn't a tantrum or a dramatic gesture. This was the logical endpoint of 15 years of systematic mistreatment. The letter detailed every birthday where Serafina got elaborate parties while I got dinner at a chain restaurant. Every Christmas where her pile of gifts dwarfed mine. Every achievement of mine that was overlooked while her smallest accomplishments were celebrated. Every time they'd made me feel like my value to the family was purely financial. Most importantly, I explained how their behavior had warped my understanding of love and family. I'd spent years believing that being useful was the only way to earn affection, that my needs were inherently less important than Serafina's, and that questioning unfair treatment made me selfish and ungrateful. The responses started immediately. First from Serafina Cordy, "Please call me. We can fix this. I didn't know they were taking your money." The manipulation was immediate, using my childhood nickname and pretending innocence while her lifestyle had been funded by theft for years. Then from Mom, "You're destroying our family over money. Your grandparents are heartbroken. Please come home and we'll discuss this rationally." The irony of asking for rational discussion after years of emotional manipulation wasn't lost on me. Dad tried a different approach. "Your behavior is selfish and cruel. After we raised you and loved you, this is how you repay us. You're an embarrassment." The mask was fully off now. No more pretending this was about family loyalty or love. But the message that broke my heart came from Marcus, my boyfriend of 4 years. "I'm seeing everything online. I'm so sorry you went through this alone. I'm proud of you for getting out. Text me your new address when you're settled. I want to visit." That's when I realized the most devastating part of my family's abuse: they'd trained me to hide their treatment from people who actually cared about me. Marcus had never known the full extent, because I'd been programmed to protect my family's image even while they were destroying me. As my boarding time approached, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete freedom from their manipulation and control. No more guilt trips about family loyalty. No more pressure to fund my sister's fantasies. No more pretending that systematic favoritism was normal family dynamics. The last thing I did before boarding was post a simple update on the plane. "Thank you everyone for confirming that I'm not crazy, and this isn't normal family behavior. See you from Prague." I turned off my phone and walked toward my new life, leaving behind 15 years of emotional and financial abuse. But I had no idea that my escape was about to trigger consequences far beyond what I'd planned. The first week in Prague was surreal. I'd rented a small apartment in Vinohrady through online research and was navigating a new city while watching my family's world implode through social media updates and messages from relatives. The fallout exceeded my wildest expectations. What I'd thought would be simple public embarrassment had triggered a full investigation of my parents' finances by family members who'd contributed money specifically earmarked for my education and future. Uncle Mike, a lawyer, had demanded a complete accounting of my college fund contributions. When my parents couldn't produce satisfactory records, he threatened legal action. Aunt Patricia had contacted her financial advisor about recovering the savings bonds she'd given me over the years. Cousin Jennifer, who worked in banking, was helping relatives trace exactly where their money had gone. The family group chat I was no longer part of was apparently a war zone. My cousin David, who still talked to me, sent screenshots of the carnage. Messages like, "How could you steal from your own daughter for 15 years?" and "The favoritism was bad enough, but theft," and "That poor girl, no wonder she left the country." More damaging was the Instagram investigation happening in real time. Serafina's followers had turned into amateur detectives, cross-referencing her lifestyle posts with the financial documents I'd shared. They'd figured out that her expensive dinners, designer clothes, and luxury vacations were all funded by money stolen from me. The comments on her posts became brutal. "Imagine being so spoiled you let your parents steal from your sister to pay for your lifestyle, and this is the most entitled behavior I've ever seen." Serafina tried damage control by posting a tearful video, claiming she had no idea about the financial arrangements and just wants her sister back. But her followers weren't buying it. Someone had screenshot her old posts bragging about her parents supporting her dreams and believing in her potential while I was working 3 jobs in college. The evidence of her complicity was overwhelming, the wedding planning ground to a complete halt. Bradley's parents, horrified by the public scandal and financial irregularities, had withdrawn their support entirely. Several vendors canceled contracts after the story went viral in local social media groups. The venue demanded payment up front instead of accepting the payment plan my parents had negotiated. But the most devastating consequence came from an unexpected source: my father's employer. Someone, I suspect Uncle Mike, had sent the documentation of my parents' financial behavior to my father's insurance company, questioning whether someone who systematically stole from family members should be handling other people's money and trust. The company launched an internal investigation and suspended Dad pending review. Mom's real estate license was under scrutiny too. The state board received complaints about her character and fitness for the profession, with relatives providing evidence of the long-term financial abuse and manipulation. Within 10 days of my departure, my parents were facing potential job loss, family ostracism, legal action from multiple relatives, a canceled wedding that had already cost thousands in deposits, and complete social isolation as friends learned about their behavior. The person keeping me updated on all this was Marcus, who'd apparently become the unofficial family communication hub since he was the only person still speaking to both me and my relatives. His daily updates were fascinating and terrifying. "Your dad came to my apartment yesterday," he texted during my second week in Prague. "He was crying and begging me to convince you to come back and fix this mess. He said the family is destroyed and it's all your fault for airing private business publicly." The audacity was stunning. After 15 years of theft and emotional abuse, Dad still believed I was responsible for the consequences of their choices. The victim was expected to protect her abusers from accountability. "Your mom tried a different approach," Marcus continued. "She called my office and told my boss that you'd had a mental breakdown and stolen family money before fleeing the country. She wanted him to fire me for enabling your theft." That was the moment I realized how dangerous they'd become. Faced with consequences for their behavior, they were willing to destroy my relationship, my boyfriend's career, and my reputation through lies and manipulation. They weren't just bad parents. They were genuinely toxic people who would harm anyone to avoid accountability. The final straw came when I learned they'd tried to access my new bank accounts by claiming I was mentally unstable and they needed emergency access to my funds. The International Bank thankfully had protocols for exactly this type of family financial abuse and refused their requests while documenting the attempted fraud. But the news that really shocked me came from cousin David Serafina and Bradley broke up. Apparently, he found out that not only was the wedding funded by stolen money, but her parents had forged your signature on some documents related to a loan they took out in your name 3 years ago. He's worried about getting entangled in legal issues and called off the engagement. I sat in a Prague cafe reading that message and felt something I hadn't expected: sadness. Not for Serafina's broken engagement, but for the family I'd thought I had. The people I'd grown up loving despite their favoritism had turned out to be capable of forgery, fraud, and systematic financial abuse. They weren't flawed parents who loved unwisely. They were criminals who'd been stealing from me for over a decade. That night, I finally blocked the last family members who were still messaging me with pleas to come home and fix things. There was nothing to fix. There was no family to return to. There were just people who'd built their lives on stealing from me and were now angry that their victim had escaped. But I was about to learn that escaping was easier than I'd thought, and my family's capacity for destruction was far from exhausted. 3 months into my Prague adventure, I was settling into a routine I'd never imagined possible. I'd found freelance consulting work with international clients, was learning Czech basics, and had started dating Pavel, a kind programmer who thought my family escape story was the bravest thing he'd ever heard. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely financially independent, with no one trying to guilt me into funding someone else's dreams. The updates from home had slowed to a trickle, but when they came, they were spectacular. The loans Serafina and my parents had taken out using forged documents in my name had triggered a federal fraud investigation. Uncle Mike, who'd initially just wanted his college fund money back, had uncovered evidence of multiple financial crimes spanning several years. The FBI's Economic Crimes Unit was now involved, and my parents were facing potential felony charges. Serafina, faced with the collapse of her engagement, the loss of her social media following, and the prospect of her parents going to federal prison, had finally broken down and admitted the full scope of what she'd known and participated in. According to David, she'd been aware of the inheritance theft since she was 18, but had convinced herself it was just family, helping family, and that I would never really need that money anyway since I was so good at earning it myself. The most satisfying news came through Marcus. My parents had been forced to sell their house to pay legal fees and settle claims from family members. The home equity loan they'd taken against the property to fund Serafina's lifestyle had left them underwater financially. They were moving into a small rental apartment and working retail jobs after losing their professional licenses. "Your mom asked me to tell you that if you come back and drop the family complaints, they'll forgive you for embarrassing them publicly," Marcus had texted. I told her that forgiveness flows from the wrongdoer to the victim, not the other way around. She hung up on me. But the most unexpected justice came from Serafina herself. Facing complete social exile and potential criminal liability, she'd started a part-time job for the first time in her life, working at a chain restaurant to pay her share of the legal settlement. According to her Instagram, which I still checked occasionally for entertainment, she was learning the value of hard work and taking responsibility for my mistakes. The irony was perfect. She was finally experiencing what I'd lived through for years, working to support herself, facing consequences for family actions, and discovering that the world doesn't owe you support just because you exist. The wedding obviously never happened. Bradley had not only broken up with Serafina but had also shared the whole story with his social circle, ensuring that her reputation for entitlement and financial manipulation preceded her everywhere. She'd become a cautionary tale about spoiled children and enabling parents. 6 months after leaving, I received an unexpected message through LinkedIn. The only platform I hadn't blocked family members on because I used it professionally. It was from Mom, and it was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever received from her. Cordelia, I know you probably won't respond to this, but I need you to know that I understand now what we did wrong. The therapy your uncle insisted we attend has helped me see how our favoritism damaged both you and Serafina. You deserved better parents, and I'm sorry we failed you so completely. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you're happy in your new life. You've always been stronger and smarter than any of us gave you credit for. I stared at that message for hours before deleting it without responding. Acknowledgement was nice, but it was 15 years too late. They'd had countless opportunities to treat their children fairly and chose favoritism every single time. One therapy-induced epiphany didn't undo a lifetime of systematic emotional and financial abuse. The real validation came from an unexpected source, my grandmother's old neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who'd somehow found me on social media. She sent a message that made me cry with relief. Honey, your grandmother talked about you constantly. She was so proud of your independence and work ethic, and she worried constantly about how your parents favored Serafina. She left you that inheritance money specifically because she knew you'd use it responsibly while your sister would waste it. She would be so proud of you for standing up for yourself. You were always her favorite, even though she couldn't say so openly. That message confirmed what I'd always suspected but had been gaslighted into doubting. Other people had seen the unfair treatment and recognized it for what it was. I wasn't crazy, oversensitive, or jealous. I was a victim of systematic family abuse who'd finally found the strength to escape. Today, a full year later, I'm thriving in ways I never thought possible. My consulting business has grown internationally. I'm fluent in Czech. Pavel and I are planning to move in together, and I'm genuinely happy for the first time in my adult life. I've built a chosen family of friends who value fairness, honesty, and mutual support, everything my biological family never offered. The financial abuse that seemed so devastating at the time actually taught me valuable skills. I'm incredibly good with money because I had to be. I'm excellent at recognizing manipulation because I survived 15 years of it. I'm confident in setting boundaries because I learned the consequences of not having them. Most importantly, I learned that family loyalty is supposed to flow both ways. Real family doesn't systematically steal from you, manipulate you, or expect you to sacrifice your future for someone else's fantasies. Real family supports everyone's success, not just the chosen favorite child. My story went viral because it resonated with so many people who'd experienced similar family dynamics. The scapegoat child who funds the golden child's lifestyle while being told they're selfish for wanting basic fairness. The response showed me I wasn't alone, and hopefully my escape inspired others to recognize and reject financial abuse disguised as family loyalty. So let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced this kind of family manipulation? Have you been expected to sacrifice your financial future for a sibling's dreams while being told it's just family helping family? Drop your story in the comments below. You'll be amazed how many people have lived through similar situations. Hit that like button if you believe in family karma and justice. Subscribe for more stories about people who chose their own happiness over toxic family expectations. And share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they're not obligated to fund other people's dreams at their own expense. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and for understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their dysfunction. Life is so much sweeter when you're not constantly being manipulated and stolen from. Here's to choosing yourself, building boundaries, and discovering that the family you create is often better than the one you were born into. You deserve better, and you have the power to demand it.